to me, you learn more if you're open. And if you close down too early, and that's what happened with meridian therapy, I think. They started having a fierce battle with the scientific acupuncturists about the existence of meridians or not, blah, blah, blah. And they hardened their position and had to make the other side wrong. And there's nothing wrong with science or neuroanatomy or all that. It's an important, very important template and gaze to view the human body. Is it complete? No. It doesn't include fascia, for instance. But again, how to grow up and continue learning. Because if you're a practitioner, if you claim to be a practitioner, if you're not a lifetime learner, what are you doing in the business?
I'm Michael Max, and this is Geological, the podcast that curates East Asian medicine and methods through the power of conversation. The Engaging Vitality folks ran a series of Q&A discussions over the past few weeks. I attended them because I appreciate the set of palpatory and mindset tools they discuss. I've been working on those subtle touch and sensing practices for a while now, looking to see if I can more reliably, in the moment, track how a treatment is going for a patient. I think it would be fair to say that I've been focused on the vitality of the patient and looking for ways to help unlock it where it's been inhibited. I'm kind of a slow learner, and so it often takes me long periods of practice before I gain a helpful clinical insight. I had one the other day that engaging vitality was not just something that I focused on for my patients, but to a certain degree was something to notice in myself, that in attending to my own vitality, my capacity to sense how a treatment was going for a patient was enhanced. While inner sensing, like Qigong or Neigong, have their place, I think it is the mindset tools of engaging vitality that helps me the most. The ones that dial up my playfulness and curiosity when working with people. The ones that have me leaning on delight instead of consternation when I find something that I'd not been looking for and now I have to reconsider everything. And perhaps the most important of the mindset skills, the capacity to have some comfort with being uncomfortable in the face of constantly being at the edge of what I know and not get tossed away with the uncertainty that is always a part of our work. Most of the people who come to see us have complex issues that have not been solved or perhaps even made worse by other practitioners. The pressure that puts on us is not insignificant. People come to us hoping for a bit of a miracle, and I, for one, hope I can deliver to some degree. For sure, there is knowledge and know-how that we must bring to the table. Years ago, many of them, back when we were both young, I learned something about mechanicking from a Vietnam vet who had worked on airplane engines in the Air Force. The guy could tinker and fix just about anything. He taught me that the first step to any kind of mechanicking job was just to look at the problem and see what you saw. Just look at it, study it, see what's actually in front of you. I think that our clinical work would benefit from this first step. Pause, observe, see what's in front of you. Have the vitality in yourself to engage with the unknown as it shows itself to you. Develop the capacity for tolerating uncertainty, maybe even getting a little friendly with it. It's not possible to separate an acupuncture treatment from the person who is doing the work. Beyond choosing where to put needles in the body, there is an aspect of attending to our patients in a way that allows us to know when we're on track. Acupuncture is a conversation with a patient's body, mind, and being. It's not really possible to listen attentively to a pulse or feel for the location of points without having the body change as you inquire. There is something that happens when you connect with your attention. You'll notice the quiet parts that are not asking for attention, but will often respond when you provide it. In this History Series conversation with Stephen Brown, we explore some of how Japanese acupuncture has made its way into the West, how the cultural influences shaped it to be more of a palpatory practice, and how not knowing, uncertainty, and humility are essential clinical tools rather than signs of inadequacy. We'll get into this and a whole lot more right after this. Stay with us. Qiological Conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. You have clinic challenges? Our sponsors have solutions. Are you licensed in California and want to get the best insurance reimbursements? AcuCare can help. Blue Poppy has a special on their Great Nature Classics line this month. Mayway focuses this month on stress, anxiety, and sleep issues. Later in the show, you'll hear about how Jane's suite of clinic management tools makes office work a breeze, and a heartfelt holiday message from everybody at Golden Flower Chinese Herbs. Be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Are you a California licensed acupuncturist who accepts insurance or wants to? Are you satisfied with your current reimbursements? You could be earning more. With the right support, joining top insurance networks such as Cigna is simple. AcuCare was started 30 years ago by acupuncturists for acupuncturists. AcuCare has already negotiated top reimbursement rates for acupuncturists. With AcuCare, you'll spend more time with patients and less time battling insurance paperwork. Email acucare@acucare.com and let them help you get in-network with Cigna and other well-paying companies. Get paid what you deserve. Email acucare@acucare.com and save $100 on your credentialing application fee. Use the code PROSPER. That discount code again, PROSPER. Contact acucare@acucare.com to get higher reimbursement rates and a credentialing company you can trust. Running a clinic means always having the formulas that you rely on. And this season, Blue Poppy is making it easier than ever to stay stocked. From now through the end of the year, enjoy 15% off the entire Great Nature Classics line. These trusted, time-honored herbal formulas are practitioner essentials, and now's the perfect moment to replenish your shelves before the New Year rush begins. Whether you're refreshing your dispensary or simply planning ahead, this limited-time savings makes it easy to stock up with confidence. And for patients traveling this holiday season, Blue Poppy's free-to-use dropship service makes it simple to get them the formulas that they need right to their door. And just like your clinic orders, dropship orders over $50 also qualify for free shipping under their standard shipping policy. Start the new year prepared. Save 15% on Great Nature Classics at bluepoppy.com.
Hi folks, I'm Yvonne Lau, president of Mayway Herbs. December is often a stressful month, so we're focusing on anxiety, sleep issues, and cognitive decline, areas where Chinese medicine can offer powerful but gentle solutions. In our newsletter and on our Chinese Medicine Matters podcast, we'll explore classical formulas and time-tested, clinically useful approaches for calming the spirit, supporting restful sleep, and nourishing mental clarity. Since 1969, Mayway Herbs has been a trusted source for high-quality herbal products. Our Plumflower brand line includes pills, tablets, extract granules, and organic herbs. And with educational resources, articles, and videos, we're here to help you provide the very best patient care. Visit us at mayway.com to learn more. We wish you a peaceful holiday season, and on behalf of everyone here at our family business, I'd like to offer our deep thanks, as always, for your support. Here's to balance, clarity, and well-being with the wisdom of real Chinese medicine.
Stephen Brown, welcome to Qiological.
Thank you, Michael.
I'm delighted to have you back here. We're here today for a history series conversation. I always like these conversations because in our East Asian medicine world, we're kind of keen on history, but so often we don't know our own history. And what I mean by history is like recent history, like as this stuff has emerged into the West. And so I'd like to begin these conversations with a little trip in the Wayback Machine.
Okay.
And go back to a time when you were first hearing about acupuncture. It was first getting your attention. Like, Where were you? How old were you? What was going on in your world? What did the headlines look like in the newspaper? What were the troubles of the day? And why on God's green earth did you think acupuncture might be something worthwhile?
That's a big question, but let me start with the personal sphere here. I was probably about 25, and I was a welder of all things at that time.
A welder?
Yes, I was working with fire and metal, and I've been in the trade for about 5 years, and I was certified, and I was working in a shipyard and also later on in a pipe fitting. But I was looking for an alternative to that rather dangerous, polluted environment. And I was raised in Japan. People know me as an interpreter and translator. And I had already 14 years in Japan, and I was thinking of doing something Japanese. And my mother was really into natural foods and stuff. So I thought maybe Japanese martial arts and hit medicine or shiatsu or something like this. And I started reading what was available in English, Felix Mann, the early acupuncture works. And what was going on in the world was Jimmy Carter. We'd lost the Vietnam War. The country was kind of in a funk, I guess, as that was going on. But I wasn't so much into politics. I was into retooling my life and all things traditional and medical martial artsy things were on the list. And so I got some money together and I moved to Japan and started my journey. That was in 1980. Yeah, 1979. Yeah.
1980. Okay. 79 and fire and metal. I love that. You were working with fire and metal. Was this in the United States that you were a welder?
Yes.
Okay.
In the Bay Area, yes.
All right.
Yeah.
And so you grew up in Japan and you were in the States. You go back to Japan because I love your phrase, Stephen. You were retooling yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was recasting my life in a different direction entirely and pointing myself to my past and to Japan's past, which is Asia's past. And it really changed my life. And I learned so much about myself, and I learned so much about Japan, and I learned so much about East Asia as well, because I ended up going to China to study. And I learned Chinese quite a bit before I went to China. And I really got a sense of Japan in Asia that I never had when I was a kid. And I am something of a historian, an amateur historian at that, but I've attended medical history conferences of not just East Asian medicine, but of Western and Greek medicine, Galenic medicine. It's all fascinating to me because the urge to heal is universal and it's taken different shapes and forms everywhere, but it's unique with acupuncture and it's unique with Japanese styles, because what happened in Japan is fundamentally different from what happened in Korea and China, where it originated. And I'll just say, and we can go into this later, but herbs and acupuncture are integral in Korean medicine and Chinese medicine, and perhaps even Vietnamese medicine. But in Japan, for historical reasons, for centuries, the two disciplines have been completely separate. And this caused the Japanese styles to become highly manual, hands-on, instead of being more analytical, abstract. And so there you have it. I could expound on any part of it, but if you want more recent history, we'll just follow up from where the 1980s took me.
Yeah, what I want to know is, because I think it's so interesting on one hand, and I do want to get into it, hearing more about the history of how medicine in Japan is different than Korea or China. I think that's interesting, and we'll get into that. But especially in this series, I'm curious about your individual journey through this, where you went, what took you where, what led to what. So you first get to Japan. You probably weren't aiming directly at acupuncture school. It sounds like you were a bit more open-ended. You're looking to change things. you want to work with healing in more traditional ways, but it seems like you were open-ended, like, what's that going to look like?
Exactly. And I started with the martial arts, and I went to all sorts of even spiritual traditions, Shintoism and Buddhism. And I didn't end up entering acupuncture school until 1980. So it was a full year later. For a whole year, I was kicking around looking at what I was going to do. And I was looking at shiatsu schools. And there's only one shiatsu school in Japan, and there were at least a dozen acupuncture schools. And the licensing system in Japan is very interesting, where massage is a different license, and moxibustion is a different license, and of course, acupuncture is independent license. And there is no license for herbs. That is something that physicians and pharmacists can do. Not that they're trained in it, but they, just like in America, carte blanche. If you're a doctor, you can practice acupuncture with or without training. It's just part of your scope of practice. In the same way.
Because you're a doctor.
Yes. And in Japan,
you're a doctor, you should be able to know that, do that.
But Japan now, most doctors who practice herbs, I want to make the point clear that most of them are very studious and well-learned herbalists. They're not just dabbling. Anyway, there were several courses I could take. And as I was starting to practice some martial arts like Aikido and stick fighting called Kendo, I looked around and asked around. And it came to light that it took 2.5 years to get a license in shiatsu and massage, which is all under the same licensure. And it took 3 years to get that plus acupuncture and moxibustion. So for just 6 more months, with the basic, most of the training in Japanese acupuncture school is Western medicine, pathology, physiology, those kind of things. So, and then there's just a little layer of whatever the technique is. So I decided, yes, let's just go for the full meal deal. So I went for shiatsu acupuncture and moxibustion. And I talked to several acupuncturists, some who had gone to a program, some were foreigners, because I did congregate with people from America and around the world in Japan, expats as it were. And the word went around that some of the acupuncture schools really didn't teach you very much. It was just basically a cram school to get a license. And most of the learning of the skill came from actually clinical practice, which you had to actually work in a clinic for a while. So,
well, that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, when you think about it.
Yes, it does. But again, you get a license, but you're not ready to practice, unlike in the States where there is clinical time. And also Korea, I think, has the best program of 6 years long. Anyway, I decided, well, I'd go to get the license anyway, just to have that piece of paper. And I would study during school because I didn't have a full-time job or a family. So I was able to do quite a lot of clinical visits and exploring with different senseis, as they call them, sifu, as they say in Chinese, but different practitioners. And I was able to supplement my learning at school, or rather fill it out, because the learning in school was 90% Western medicine. They wanted you to know what not to do. And what to do, you had to learn pretty much outside of school. And that process was very, very fruitful because I got to meet many practitioners and see the variety. I mean, the first question that came to my mind was, how can all these different things work? I mean, even within the relatively small field of acupuncture, people were doing entirely different things, from deep needling.
I know, it's so weird, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, what is this? How could this? Because all these practitioners, I didn't go to any people who were just startups or failing in their practice. These were, I got to meet some of the top-notch people, and they were doing completely different things and getting good results and seeing many patients. So it was that was a question I had for a long time before I realized.
How did you meet these people? You're this foreigner who's there. I mean, you're an expat. You speak the language. You grew up there to some degree. But how did you meet these high-level senseis while you're a student?
Well, there's different associations, and I had one angle, is many foreigners were there, but they didn't know the language. And I did very well. So, of course, I could present myself in a respectable manner. See, in Japan, foreigners do faux pas. That's just what we do.
Yeah, we can't help it.
They're rude and irreverent and all that. That's just taken for granted. But then you're put in that basket. But here's this kid who comes along who speaks fluent Japanese, who's actually polite. Also, too,
Japanese polite.
yes. And I listen. And also they realized some of these more famous ones wanted to have their work presented in the States or wanted to have a wider audience. One way to get a bigger audience is to, of course, to go abroad. And that gives you a little bit of a status. And so some of them wanted that particular advantage and used me. And I'd worked with Dr. Monaco first. He was the first big person that I worked with. And I started translating some of his papers. He already had an assistant or two who was doing that, but the English was not as good as mine. So I had the language in where I could offer some of my services for those doctors who wanted to present a paper in English to the acupuncture council. Because Japan has been having international acupuncture conferences where English was the main language, and they'd have to pay somebody to translate that. So these were top-notch people who had papers to present, and then I could. So that was my in.
Mm-hmm. That was handy. Lucky you.
Yeah, the language. Yes, very. Yes. Plus, I wasn't that much of a writer, but because I did that, I had to be, and I did a lot of reading, and I was a professional translator. That's how I got my way through school in Japan. I was there 7 years, but I really paid my way by being an interpreter or a translator. Not that good at first, but as you know, just take it till you make it. And I was.
Yep, mama lie. Step by step.
I was good enough and fluent enough that I could be average right away, and then I picked it up from there.
So you get your license, which means, in essence, the Western medicine stuff. But at the same time, you have been studying with people that actually do medicine and different people that do different types of medicine. What are some of the different ways that you were seeing these doctors practice?
Some doctors were strictly neuromuscular, using the typical Japanese, what they call scientific acupuncture. And so basically it was that gaze of modern physical therapy, let's say, but using acupuncture or dry needling type, stronger needling perhaps. And then there were those who were reading classics and trying to do something with 8 trigrams or you name it. There were so many things, taking different aspects of the classics and working on it. And one very famous group, the most established group was called Meridian Therapy. And that was because they were the first large group nationwide with branches all over Japan who had agreed upon system to do what they called a Nanjing style of acupuncture. Come to find out, of course, many, many years later of practicing that style and reading the Nanjing and comparing it to what other people do, I realized that it was only a part of the Nanjing, not all of it. And but anyway, the Meridian therapists were the biggest group of traditional acupuncturists who actually referred to anything remotely classical. In fact, the neuromuscular acupuncturists didn't hardly refer to meridians at all. In fact, there were points and trigger points, but the channels didn't really have much to do with their diagnosis or treatment. And that's why they emphasize meridian therapy. Hey, folks, channels, hello, acupuncture with channels. What a concept. But it is.
Right. Well, it's interesting that these doctors that were taking a more physiotherapist look, they weren't even looking so much at the channels. They weren't looking at the classics. They were doing something very much that rhymes with the fairly new dry needling here, past 10, 12 years. Same idea, like channels, points. This isn't acupuncture. This is dry needling. It's a whole different thing. No, we're scientific. We're not doing that old thing, right? That's hocus pocus. And then you got your meridian therapy guys going, oh, actually, Nanjing, yeah, we're all about it, right? Meridians, yes. Looking back in time, that's our jam.
Yeah. So just going back in Japan about 80 years, because it was in the 1940s that meridian therapy was established. Before that, like 100 years before that, the government forced the majority of acupuncturists were blind in Japan at the time, and the government took over the education and westernized it radically
And this is what year?
and even eliminated, I would say in the late 1800s, like 1860 and 1870. So they forced people to learn Western anatomy and physiology, and then you were on your own to figure out what to do with these needles and bodies. But fortunately, these were blind people, and they also had teachers who were very gifted with their hands. So it was a very hands-on, learn trigger points and other things on your own. But again, meridian therapy was in the 40s, some men started reading, and they were sighted men. Majority were sighted men who could read classics, of course. The movement in the 40s that started to revive what acupuncture used to be. And they did their best with what they had. And they recreated a partial system of the classics. And the critique of most Japanese classical acupuncturists now is that meridian therapy, well, they have a system, but it needs to be modified or expanded or otherwise updated, like any software. It was too limited in its scope. At least that's the general consensus. If you go to Wikipedia and could read Japanese, you'd find that more about meridian therapy than you would that it's the one true classical method. And that goes to what I believe about any method, classical or modern or scientific, is that which part of the tail or which part of the elephant are you grabbing? Who has the whole truth? Nobody.
Nobody.
And to argue that point is ridiculous. You have to explain what you're doing and try to understand what the other person's doing and see what bases you're covering rather than believing that you have the biggest chunk of truth. And this is unfortunately what's happened in Japan. And there's still this battle raging between the non-meridian and the meridian group, where one really discounts the other as being illegitimate or frauds, which is a sad thing, because the first lesson I learned is that you could be doing completely different things and still be doing good clinical, good healing work. So it's not as how you do matters to who you are, but it doesn't. What you do matters to who you are, but how you do it, the spirit you bring to it, the attention you bring to it. That's a huge piece that people forget about, and they think just the hardware, the structure of the system will gain you all the results. But good luck with that.
Okay, there's a lot here. I want to unpack this just a little bit. First of all, what you're describing in Japan is exactly what's happening here as well. Certain people have a system. This is the system. This is the best system. Our system is better than the other system. These guys over here, they don't really know what they're doing. Yay, our team. We see the same thing here. Some of it's marketing. Some of it's branding. Some of it is differentiating. Well, those guys down the street, they do blah, blah, blah. And over here, well, because we read this book or we've studied with this teacher, we have this other thing. This just might be the way humans operate, period. I've got a feeling. I don't know if we get away from that. I'd like to get your thoughts on it.
Well, it's true. We do have this idea that let's just save time and say I'm right kind of attitude.
Let's save time and say I'm right. It's funny.
But we acknowledge that tendency that we want to be right. We want to be on the winning team. Okay, and so do you. So is there a place for both of us to be in the meantime until the judge actually rules one or the other? It seems to me that it's not on me to tell you that your method, it's for you to decide that you want to change what you do. But again, keeping to my conviction of what I need, my style, my what what I do, and then looking at, okay, well, how come you're getting patients and how come you're getting results? How can I learn from you, rather than how can I, in other words, rather than denying your success or your knowledge, what can I learn from it? And I think it's hard, but it's a grown-up thing. More childishly, I'd want to eliminate you or ignore you. But more adult, you'd want to say, okay, or I don't understand that, but there's something that you're doing that has to be working. After all, you've been doing it all this many years. So, yeah, to me, you learn more if you're open. And if you close down too early, and that's what happened with meridian therapy, I think. They started having a fierce battle with the scientific acupuncturists about the existence of meridians or not, blah, blah, blah. And they hardened their position and had to make the other side wrong. And there's nothing wrong with science or neuroanatomy or all that. It's an important, very important template and gaze to view the human body. Is it complete? No. It doesn't include fascia, for instance. But again, how to grow up and continue learning. Because if you're a practitioner, if you claim to be a practitioner, if you're not a lifetime learner, what are you doing in the business? I mean, there's too much to know. And so the attitude of really trying to steal or at least borrow some things from even what you consider fake or unlikely to work, there's something in there. And I wish I could have had this speech in Japan or other places, but when there's culture wars like we have in our politics now, neither side's really listening. Both sides are just trying to consolidate their position. But I don't think we are in a position as a profession in acupuncture. We're too small. We need each other. And that's why I really love Qiological, because I do see it as a unifying, or at least information, free information is available from all different aspects and parts of our profession. And to me, this is really, really valuable, because we need to first accept that we're here and then figure out how we can work with each other and then even possibly support each other. Because otherwise the profession is going to fragment and lose more political power. And then pretty soon medicine and the insurance industry is going to run the show. It's going to be a very limited scene.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, a practice management software and EMR I use to keep things running smoothly behind the scenes. When I first started looking for a practice management tool, I wanted something that felt like a teammate, not just more tech to figure out. That's why I switched to Jane. One of the things I love most about Jane? Their support team. You get unlimited help from real humans, even on Saturdays, by phone, email, or chat, all at no extra cost. It's easy to learn about Jane in your own time, too. Jane's guide is packed with helpful tips and updates, and it's always growing. And maybe best of all, Jane has a wonderful community of practitioners, so even if you're running a solo practice, you don't have to feel like you're doing it alone. I appreciate how Jane's tech support responds to my email inquiries, and just the right amount of detail they provide in helping me to solve a problem. If you're curious about what Jane can do for your practice, head to jane.app/demo. And if you're ready to get started, use the code Qiological for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. Well, you've just brought up a number of different issues. One is the plurality of our medicine. One is the very weird, fundamentally weird aspect that you can take different pieces of the tradition, you can take different ways of working and still get results, right? To a Western materialist, I'm running an experiment to see, is it A or is it B? And if the answer comes out, well, it's A, B, D, and some other stuff we don't know. How do you make sense of that? How does a Western mind make sense of that? So that's one piece. And then the other piece is something that I think, like you were saying, and something we're seeing in our politics right now in a very clear way, because I don't know when it's ever been quite as cutthroat, that people line up on different sides of things, and those guys over there, because we're compassionate and we know better, they're just stupid. You know, I mean, it's almost funny. One of the things that I've noticed about acupuncture, Stephen, over the years that I've done this, and this is actually one of the things that has me so curious about the medicine and why I do the podcast. One of the things I've noticed about acupuncturists is that there is nobody harder and rougher on acupuncturists than other acupuncturists, which kind of breaks my heart. But I see it, and it worries me.
Yeah, I have that too. I have my judgments about acupuncturists, but it doesn't have to do with style or even any way they do their work. But it's if they're into more the business side than they are the healing or the treatment side. That kind of irks me. But I think going back to the idea that there's a lot of variety, a lot of diversity in our profession. I think the difference between Western medicine and our medicine is we include the subjective. We include, I mean, a lot more. And of course, complaints are subjective, and pain is subjective. But we really include a lot more of we have more time, and we include more of the patient's subjective situation and the experience of the treatment encounter, for instance, where we spend more time with the patient. I think there's more room for something that can't be quantified and something that can't be replicated in another setting. And in an extreme sense, you can say you can't repeat the same treatment. So we are not afraid to include subjectivity. And there's an intersubjective part. And placebo, for instance, is a subjective phenomenon. And how to use that too. Whereas in Western medicine, they're trying to, if not eliminate it, at least rule it out. And that's not what we're doing. We're not trying to be non-objective either. That's not the point either. But we're including both the subjective and the objective. And if the patients say they have a certain symptom, I don't assume they're malingering or that they're crazy. It never occurs to me. Even I might think, but I would never say that to a patient, just because for them to pay money and take their time to come and tell me, it is a concern of theirs. And it could be psychosomatic, but it's still somatic. It's still there.
Right. I love that. It could be psychosomatic, but it's still somatic. I think that's really important. Yeah, maybe it's coming out of the psyche, but because it's so entwined with the physicality, it's also in the physicality. And you could try to dismiss it by going, well, your mind made that up and now your body's experiencing it. But hey, guess what? If your body's experiencing it, there it is.
Right. And so
and that to me is also just such a fascinating entanglement. We hear about mind-body connection. And I mean, to me, that doesn't even begin to describe it. The incredible way that our physicality and our emotionality and our mentality and spirituality, although I get nervous talking about that because I don't know much about it, but I suspect it's in there. It's so entangled. You can't pull one thread and not touch the others.
Right. And this is why it starts to become weird, because everybody is different and every practitioner is different, and they'll interface with, you talked about spirit, mind, emotions, and body. You can't touch the same areas. Everyone's wired a little bit differently. The patient is, and of course practitioners are. And some people are called to one aspect more than the other. But wherever you're playing with a puzzle, you start to affect the whole thing because everything is connected. See, this is where we're fundamentally different from. It's not parts, it's the whole. And our medicine is looking at the whole, even though it might be addressing a part. And it's highly subjective and multifactorial and messy, but we're willing to mess around.
It's messy. I like that.
Yes, it is. And we have to have boundaries because it's a thing. There was in Washington State, they had a problem. I don't know if someone got sued, but they were trying to do something more like psychotherapy during their acupuncture sessions.
Oh, they did get sued. I heard this was a while ago.
Yes, but it was a real thing.
Yes, it was a real thing.
It's serious.
Because they were focused more on the psyche part
Yes,
than the physical part, and the person took it as, well, they're doing psychotherapy with me, and that person didn't have a license for that.
right, right. So, you can step beyond the bounds of giving counsel or listening. It's a little bit of health counseling or.
Ooh, hang on 1 second. You just said something really important. You could step beyond your boundaries by just listening.
Well, no, but I think in the counsel, I think the listening would not be. I think.
But I think there's something here. I want to go into this for a second because in my work, because I'm not great at mental models, over the years I've had to listen more to my patients, right? Because I couldn't like jump to, oh yeah, well that's spleen yang deficiency, blah blah blah. I'd have to listen more to figure out what's going on with my patients. And so over the years, I've developed a capacity to listen. It helps me on the podcast. All right. Oddly enough, it's something I've seen as deficiency all these years because I couldn't grasp the mental models so well. So I lean on listening. And I have patients tell me all the time that they say, well, this is like having a psychotherapy session. It's like, look, I'm not a psychotherapist. I have no interest in, that's not what I do. I don't have an interest in doing that. But for me to help you with the problem that you came in with, I need to know more about what's involved. And so I have to, I can't not listen to you. I have to listen to be able to help you. And it turns out, at least in my experience, that act of listening, I think it does something to people. And there was something that you mentioned a little earlier in this conversation, that there's like the hardware of what we do or the technique of what we do. But there's also the like who we are or how we are with our patients. And I'd like to hear you talk a little bit more about that because I don't really have words for what that is.
Well, I can.
But I've noticed it showing up in my practice.
Yes, well, I can add some words, and it's actually a pointer because it's very interesting. My own mentor, Dr. Shido, he he even said his acupuncture is an expression of who you are. So beyond the technique, he said who you are as a human being really has a profound effect on the outcome of the acupuncture. And what is meant by that is you mentioned one of the key things, and that's the ability to listen. And it's a non-judgmental listening. It's a listening that is more curiosity than, yes, somewhere in there we're trying to categorize or put them in a pattern or leading to some sort of treatment. But before that, there's just wow, and like you do in your podcast, you're really curious about this person and what they've been through and what they know. So that is very, very powerful. And the other thing, even when the patients aren't talking, is the space we hold for the patient. And again, it's, yes, we have to make a diagnosis, but in a sense, we hold, the patient might be angry about or they could be sad or afraid, all these emotions that come up when you have a serious problem or something you don't understand. And we just say, yeah, I can feel we're not saying this, we're just feeling it as an empath. Most acupuncturists have some degree of empathy. And you just say, yeah, okay, I get how this could feel this way. But you're not adding to it because you're not afraid and you're allowing it, you're giving it space. And that to me, of being present with curiosity and interest, I think it creates potential. Whereas if you're there quickly deciding what to do and get finished with this treatment, or if you're there wondering, oh my God, I don't know how to treat this. If you have your emotions superimposing themselves on the situation, it really is detrimental. Because a lot of times, particularly if you have a lot of experience, things drop in. Like, oh, what about this? I think I want to check the abdomen. It just comes from experience, or something, I need to check the feet. Or you might just have an impulse to check their neck. Things just, on a physical level, come to you and you just follow up because there's no harm in examining the patient. And it leads to things that are non-rational or non-linear. more left brain kind of thing. Excuse me, right brain. The left brain would be rational and linear. But I really feel that ability to be with a person and wonder not, you're looking in even closer with interest. And that ability is hard to maintain if you have a lot of patients or you're busy or you have stress in your own life. It's hard to stay neutral, but tell me more.
Yes, neutral and with interest.
I think it's potential. I think it's really, this is what patients really miss in the very quick and necessarily perfunctory exams that might happen in a Western medical clinic, because doctors are really stressed. The system doesn't give them enough time to take a breath. And unless you take care of yourself, or you have at least a minimum level of self-care and nurturance to yourself, it's very hard to be sincerely in that space I talked about. It's a strain.
Well, it's emotional work, right? It requires a kind of attentiveness, and you can't really speed it up. There's a certain pace and tempo that I think it unfolds at. People unfold their stories to us, and people share with us who they are at a certain rate and tempo, and you can't really speed that up. I mean, you can do tongue and pulse, and here's a few symptoms, and maybe treat 10 people in an hour in a very perfunctory way. And you can probably help them too, to some degree. But I think if you want to, maybe it's just the way that I work and the way that I want to work, I just need a little more time. I'm not good at being quick.
So you've put your finger right on the point, and that's time, giving time. And again, when you give people time, and I'm not talking about a certain amount of time, but you, unless you give yourself time and you feel you've been given that time to be you or feel you, you can't, it's going to be very hard for you to have that sense of that timing, because it's been said in The Art of War by Sun Tzu, the advantage of position does not equal the advantage of timing.
Oh.
And knowing the rhythm or the timing.
The damage of position does not equal the damage of timing.
No, the advantage.
Oh, the advantage.
If you're at the top of the hill with a good fort, you had an advantage.
Yes.
The advantage but of course, there's one more after that, and the advantage of timing is not better than the advantage of harmony in the ranks. In other words, good morale. In other words, if you have a good rapport, you can call it rapport. If you had bad position or bad point and bad timing, but you love each other or you trust each other, better yet, things will work out. But that's the art of war. But maybe it's part of the art of acupuncture too.
Maybe it is. I think it is now. I hadn't thought of it in that way until I just heard you say it in this moment. Harmony among the ranks. Wow.
But giving people the time to think. Well, I mean, and since we do East Asian medicine, we see people are seen as distinct pockets of I'm a package of Stephen Brown and you're a package of Michael Max. But it depends on who's showing up. If you're spleen deficient, your spleen's not fully there. So when you say harmony in the ranks, we're talking about harmony of all the officials or the organs. And that presents an entirely different personality. So, and it could be your ancestors as well. So I love East Asian medicine because it handles multi-factors and things like the different organs and different spirits in the organs and your ancestors and perhaps your wife or your animals who live with you. All these, this is the difference. We're inclusive. We're not trying to exclude and isolate a pathological part. All pathology or illness is part of an environment. And we're looking at that whole environment and looking for harmony with that environment, which is not at all the case for the other medicine. And we're going to be fundamentally different if we try to become like the other medicine and try to limit time. Yes, we need boundaries, and time is a very important boundary. I'll repeat that. That's time. You must have time boundaries with your clients to be effective. But Having said that, you need to have that ability, as you said, when something takes time, a critical part of the treatment or listening, whatever it is, you can stop and just be in full curiosity and let that unfold. And to me, that's right on the point.
The weird thing for me about that, Stephen, and in some ways this is what I most love about the work, but it's also the part about the work that makes me wonder, am I losing my mind or am I even doing this right? Because there's this like weightless moment of, well, now what? Right? Like connecting for a moment before making all the discernments that will lead to a diagnosis and some points and that sort of thing. There's often some moments of, it's very interesting how this person is put together. Curious to be them. Generous of them to share it with me. How unusual is that? I couldn't have, it's like reading a great book of fiction. It's like, wow, how'd that character get to be the way they are? Right? And then there comes that moment where we have to move into some kind of action because it's our job to be helpful. And it does require action, and it requires, oh God, I've read a little bit of quantum physics. I can't say I understand it. Mostly when I hear quantum physics, I hear blah, 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 because it's just such weird stuff. But I'm going to say a little bit of something from what I've read about that, much to my surprise, because I don't feel like I know much about it. But it's like there's a potential, and then in a moment it collapses into a thing. There's a wave, bang, it becomes a particle. And it's in that bang, it's a particle. Okay, now I can do a treatment at this point. See what happens. Let's see what it does to their waveform.
But again, when we've allowed the time, whether we're listening to sounds, voice of the patient, or whether we're listening to the pulse or whatever way we're apprehending the information.
Yeah, that weird thing on their belly that you can't quite figure out what it is.
Yeah, but and letting it resound in our body. In other words, our brain, our rational brain is just part of the brain, and then letting it go deeper into our unconscious, and then let something bounce back from there. That's the key. Is I think all it takes is experience, and then the time to slow down and let that emerge. Because you said something very important. It was like it was an unfolding process, and you couldn't speed it up. And of course, that may be true for part of the treatment or the first initial treatment, but after that, it's mostly a conversation with the body and trying to feel where it needs to have more flow or have less flow. That's what it boils down to me for. Is where is it not happening that it could happen? Where is it too much? And, that's what the meridian is called, excess deficiency. But it's a felt sense rather than always an analytical, okay, I've got this spleen something. Because even if it's a spleen deficiency diagnosis, which side of the spleen channel and how is the stomach channel then manifesting on that? It's a felt sense experience. And the Japanese, because of the blind practitioners being dominant for at least 2 centuries, probably more, the felt sense of it has never really been lost. Even with the so-called scientific acupuncturists, they're full on sensing with their hands what the body's doing beyond what the patient feels it's doing. And to me, a lot of the time taken in Japanese styles especially, is not in the listening, but in the palpating.
Which is a kind of listening.
And absolutely, because it's the same state of waiting and listening or feeling and, trying to understand the bigger picture. What does this particular weird thing on the belly mean? Where did you come from? There's a question, an active, and I think we need to have some of that in each one. Otherwise, our practice will die, because it's not that hard to prematurely just throw patterns onto people and execute the treatment and get some types of results. But I think it becomes dry if you just go cookie cutter.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you something here. So often, I've seen this in myself, and I see this with younger practitioners. They always want to know the answer, like, what does this mean and what do I do about it? And I get that because I want to be helpful and I want to be right and I want to be helpful. But so often, and I think I alluded to this earlier, there's these things where it's like, I don't know what that is. Where I'll feel something in a pulse and it's like, I don't know what that is. There's something here. I don't even know what to call it, right? It's not none of the pulse names I learned. I've got a number of pulses, Stephen, that I feel like I've discovered. They just show up and I've got a name for them. It's like, oh, there's the ringing pulse. There's a pulse and it rings and there's pulse. Oh, like there's a rubber chicken pulse, right? It's just like really rubbery kind of, it's like rubbery and soft and it's not gushy. It's hard, but it's like, it's rubbery. Boing, 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 right? Or sometimes I'll feel something on the abdomen. It's like, what the hell is that? This doesn't match with anything anybody's told me.
Yeah, that's
So now I have to initiate my own process of inquiry. Have you run into this kind of thing? Like, I don't know what that is. What do you do with those moments? How do you navigate them?
well, fortunately, as with other things, I've had a good mentor and who set the example by admitting he doesn't know. And that's why I love Dr. Shudo so much because he will tell you if he doesn't know, he doesn't know. And one time during I think it was a seminar, but someone asked him, what's the diagnosis? And he said, I don't know yet. And he'd palpated the pulses and he touched the abdomen. And now he was beginning to do some light needling on the Ren channel. But he was just initiating a very, very light treatment to see where the body would go. But he said, I don't know yet. And it means I'm still curious, I'm still looking. In other words, there's no deadline for finding out what's going on. There's only refining that
Mm-hmm.
pattern. Because every pattern, even a spleen deficiency, say, has a lot of varieties, like which side and which it manifests differently. So just keep coming back to, I don't know yet. And I'm still gathering information because to me, that's goes back to what we're talking about with the time. Unless you have some pockets in each treatment where you can be unknowing or still looking, I don't know yet, and then keep going. Because see, at that point, if you cross your arms and step back, that's going into your head. But at that point, you go, well, I've done the abdomen now. Let's just take the back and see what shows up there. Or your inquiry could be anything. It doesn't have to be even palpation. It could be looking too, but just continuing the search because you're looking for something. As long as you don't go into your head or go into a should have, I should know what this is. No, you don't. But again, knowing a very famous and successful acupuncturist who's willing to admit he doesn't know yet was very helpful for me.
Yeah. The piece that I love about this, Stephen, is that I don't know isn't a stopping point. It's like, I don't know, throw my hands up. It's not a stopping point. It's a starting point. I like hearing what you say with Dr. Shudo. I don't know what this is yet. I'm going to do a little light needling. I'm going to put a little something into the body, little call, see what kind of response, right? Maybe a little something on, this Ren channel's tight. I'm going to do a little something, see if it changes the Ren channel. And we'll go from there, right? Because what do I know right now? Ren channel's tight. What else do I know? Well, this, and that. What else do I don't know, but the Ren channel's tight. Okay, well, we'll start there. See what happens. Take a walk together.
Yeah, yeah. So not using the right rational brain as a limiter, but as something that is backing you up. In other words, it's not the pattern is not in front of you, but the pattern's kind of informing the rest of your search. Because even if you do have a pattern, it's really not highly individualized. And so you want to refine the pattern or the needling technique or the dosage or I don't know, something else in the room. Maybe you want to talk to the patient more and keep them, or maybe you want to have them settle down and you lower your voice, you're more soothing. You can modify multiple things in the room and the way you touch and encounter them that would shift the dynamic and take them towards a state of harmony, more receptive and able to. But again, this is where medicine by necessity is a mass thing. It's a medicine of averages, and it's a medicine of public health. I mean, we're trying to look at you against a large group of people, whereas in acupuncture, it's just you've said it, like it's just been foisted upon us because medicine is what it is. The job of actually listening to patients and actually touching them and attending to their symptoms, which are by scientific measures, there's no reason they should have those symptoms. So patients are thinking they're crazy, but we're still listening. We're trying to listen to the body, and it's just a different process. And this is why I'm so against the medicalization of acupuncture. I'm not against the science of acupuncture, science in general.
That's a really important distinction.
Oh, absolutely, because there's so much information there. And, people have x-rays. I want to see them. I want all the information I can get but I don't want to presuppose they have one thing or another. Medical diagnosis to me is not the end point. It's a starting point. And so is the TCM diagnosis or even a meridian therapy diagnosis is, okay, now how much, which side, and there's a lot to be decided. And that can only be done to the experience of my body, knowing what feels right. And then with the patient, so this is where Japanese styles, if properly understood, it wouldn't matter which, because there's so many Japanese styles that have come to the States besides meridian therapy and the Kiko style too. But it's all pointing towards a felt sense. Felt sense of who? Well, the practitioner first and foremost. And of course, it has to translate into the felt sense of the patient feeling like that's a comfortable treatment. There are really against painful treatments or painful points. That's just a Japanese don't like strong treatments in general. Exceptions are there. And so the whole treatment as a whole has to feel, that was really great. Sense of relief. Even though, let's say, they had a headache or a back pain, and that's still kind of there. But a sense of, a felt sense of burden, something shifting. And that can be felt when someone does that, when someone takes a deep sigh. We have this happen all the time in clinic. Where someone just, and we resonate with that. They resonate with us. And in medicine, there's just not the time or the framework for that type of intersubjective experience. But if we lose that, the baby's gone. The bathwater is, we can become very scientific and very objective, but we can't let that part go.
As the year 2025 comes to a close, Golden Flower Chinese Herbs wishes you, your family, and your patients a warm holiday season full of joy and restful recharging. They have high hopes for 2026 being better. Remember that this season calls for slowing down as our qi retreats to the interior. We will be wise to respect that natural cycle. Golden Flower is here for you in this holiday season with gratitude from everybody at Golden Flower Chinese Herbs. One of the things that I find so curious about doing this work and navigating it really is patient expectations, because they come in with the ideas that they have of seeing a Western doctor. I've got a problem. You're the person who knows something who's going to help my problem go away, right? That's usually why people come to any kind of medical practitioner, because they've got something that they don't want and they want to get rid of it, or there's something they don't have and they want to get it. It's one of those two things, generally speaking. And they come to us because we're supposed to know how to do that. And that's the tacit agreement of medicine. So on one hand, that is the framework that we work within, because that's just the way our culture is. And that's the way people think about medicine. And we can't get rid of that, but it's like we have to not let that stop us from doing the kind of inquiry that you've just been talking about?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same, whether we're talking about how acupuncture is becoming more medicalized or patients have a medical or a expectation until there is somebody in the room who can just be with what's going on, and I said a non-judgmental and a curious way. There's no space for, it's kind of quantum physics, but there's no space for change because we're pushing on it's like someone comes in with pain in the shoulder and we just put 100 needles or 10 needles, it doesn't matter, but you're cranking on the shoulder because that's what's wrong. And of course that's a very very low level of treatment if that's all that's done. Even if it works sometimes, because you are basically within the framework of the problem, and it's been famously said that you can't solve the problem within the exact framework that caused the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So the patient's gaze is accepted, but I keep pointing to the fact that I'm interested in the whole picture, and we need to talk to the patient to bring their own. There's aversion or fear or whatever associated with the symptom, but we need to see what other resources are available within themselves, and that's where doing something they don't expect, like cupping or something that takes them out of their obsession with focusing on that particular problem, is very useful, because then there's resources available. But again, without going into a long-winded explanation to patients, we need to guide them. Okay, let it alone. Let me check it out. I've got this. Not that I'm going to fix it, but yeah, there needs to be room. We need to allow it into the room and allow it to, as you say, unfold and unwind. And unfortunately, the medical paradigm wants to excise it or kill it or something. That's not the only thing in medicine, but there seems to be the more dispersing, get out of here kind of treatment than there is tonifying in medicine. But it's always a tricky dance because we are in a very rational, hyper achievement, let's get it done environment, time pressure as well. But we have to do this dance. It's almost like bullfighting.
Stephen Brown, you're the first person I've heard to compare acupuncture with bullfighting.
Well, it's the bull in the room, or the elephant in the room is that one that wants to just get it over with and not have a process, not give a due process. And that's just our culture, is we're just so want to get it over with and move on to the next thing. We haven't given our body time to the symptom time to speak. And we can't do this in clinic. And that's why it's wonderful to have the body, because the patient's minds are connected to the body. And we start working with the body, even just palpating. The patients have an innate sense that, oh, here's this thing, not just a symptom, but my whole body is in on this. And my whole body wants attention. And once you get them onto that train, some people are afraid of touch for various reasons, and that's not our problem. But other than that, there is an innate need to be heard and felt and touched. And I think that's going to save us away from that bull that wants to just push the thing out and get it over with and get on to the next thing, which is always at our backs, and we have to just have that little thing and distract it. It's the art of, just like having a child.
Over here, over here. Hey, big bull, over here. Look.
Yeah, and then,
You're big and you're powerful and you're potentially very dangerous, but just draw their attention over here. Drawing the attention. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is very much like Tai Chi. But this is, I really love how you're taking time in the show to cover this, because you can learn everything there is to know that you can learn in books, but until you practice it, because it's scary to be with a bull. And it's actually scary to be with patients, some of them especially, and to admit it to yourself and then to work with it. And in the practice of that, and knowing other people too have gone through that, and that we share this rather than pretend that we know it. We can put up that front to patients, but we shouldn't to each other. I know it all and I've got it all figured out. No, no, I'm just still learning and I'll never quit because it's too fascinating.
I recently went to my 50th high school reunion. It's the first high school reunion I've ever been to. I thought I'd go see what we all look like after 50 years. Yeah. And a lot of people are retired.
Yeah, yeah,
I met a lot of people that are retired.
yeah.
And of course, they ask me what I'm doing. Are you still working? It's like, yeah. It's like, well, do you want to? And honestly, Stephen, I feel like I'm just getting the hang of it. Like I'm just kind of starting to get a swing, a certain kind of swing. So no, I don't want to stop doing it.
Yeah.
And it's weird after 25 years-ish. Can't remember how long I've been doing this. That there is that. I mean, on one hand, the idea of lifelong learning, oh, that just sounds really groovy. But the flip side of lifelong learning is there's a constant sense of, what the hell am I doing? Right? On a dark day, what the hell am I doing? And on a good day, man, what a wild and exciting playground.
Well, I just loved how you wrote about imposter syndrome, and that was just really great because to put that right, rather than having it on your back, putting it right next to you and saying, hi, okay, let's keep going. It's just the same thing as not knowing and saying, okay, let's keep going. It's just admitting what's there and moving forward. And there's going to be that to a greater or lesser extent always, because as you said, people are fascinating and there's so many layers, and we're not excluding layers. We're not narrowing them down to one thin slice of their symptom. So it's huge. And it's a gift that they're giving us, and it's a gift that we're giving them by inviting everyone in. I mean, not like in China. I remember in China, I mean, there were 2 or 3 people in the family who were just hanging out, watching the treatment, asking questions and stuff.
It's a family affair. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a family affair. Yeah, yeah. It's fun. But we are doing something similar without actually, we are multi-factors, and we can only use our body at that point in our sense of balance, our sense of comfort to gauge, I think we need to focus on this. It's really, you really have to have it in your body.
Okay. This brings up a question. This is a bugaboo of mine. So I want to run this by you. I hear from people sometimes, especially newer practitioners. Maybe I am picking on newer practitioners. We'll see. But I sometimes hear practitioners say things like, well, I'm doing this because, well, I work intuitively. And sometimes I get really nervous when I hear people say that because I don't know what it means. What does it mean to work intuitively? I know for myself, and this is just me talking to me, that it's like, well, I've just got a feeling about something, so I'm just going to follow my feeling. I'm going to call it intuitive. Where it gets dangerous for me is, am I just making this up and hoping it's real, or am I actually listening to people and responding? And I wonder if you have any sense of like how you puzzle out what is my wishful thinking versus what is coming out of pinging off the unknown in my own non-rational mind and somehow coming back in a connective and helpful way. Does that make sense? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I think it totally makes sense, and you can only be as intuitive as you are grounded and as you have experience. In other words, if you're not a sailor, you're not going to know what to do with the wind. And so one thing is you need to be grounded, and that means that you know your stuff in terms of anatomy and physiology and basic surface anatomy and where things are, and not the basics. You have your basics down. And in the Japanese, when they do martial arts training, they keep saying, even if you're advanced, keep coming back to the basics, keep coming back to the basics. It's like anybody who's doing sports or anything. They keep coming back to the thing. So it's something that has to be repeated. Dr. Shido says 10 years, but you have to repeat the same movements over and over. So if you're doing something new each time, it's not as intuitive as you think. But if you're repeating something, but in a slightly different way. Like, for instance, you're taking that rubber chicken thing and you say, well, which part of the pulse is more rubber chicken?
The rubber chicken pulse.
Yeah, which part of the pulse is more rubber chicken? Is it on the right side or the left side, or is it on the more on the surface, or is it deeper? So you're following a certain unknown thing that you're starting to get interested in, but you're getting the nuances into it. But each time you say, oh, this is a rubber chicken, this is a flying duck, oh, this is a dragonfly, and you start creating 100 different categories, and you never ground them into patient's symptoms or the patient's. That's what I mean. Intuition would ideally be focused on a certain realm, and each time you would elaborate on some understanding you already have. It wouldn't be like a psychic who says, oh, your mother is telling me that blah, blah, blah. It's not something new. It's something old in your body, and it's layers that are starting to become more clear to you. So I think intuition is used as, fantasy or just playing around, just trying something because it seems interesting. Versus in the Japanese, especially with the martial arts, but acupuncture too, it's about layering and just repeating the same thing over and over with more interest and more, okay, which aspect of that same thing are we looking at? And it gets finer and finer and finer. So again, grounded intuition means intuition doesn't fly off in different directions each time. It's got a theme. It's got a path it's following, even with different patients.
Okay. That lands for me. That makes sense. There's a theme to it. There's a thing that comes. You're exploring the same thing in different ways with different people. It's like, oh, there's that thing again. Okay, here it is. I know something about this, and part of what I know is I don't know a lot about it, but I know that there is something here. Oh, and here it is again. Okay, what does it have to say to me now? What did it say before? What does it say now? Maybe I still don't know, but I know there's rubber chicken pulse. I know that. What else is going on with this person? Are they like the other people I know with rubber chicken pulses?
Yeah, there's an accumulation.
It's usually skinny people.
Yeah.
It's usually older, skinny people now that I think about it. Actually, it is. It's older, skinny people.
You better look out.
I just put that together. Huh. Thank you.
I don't know how historical this is, but with the Japanese styles, because there's such lack of traditional grounding in the channels and in the Zangfu and stuff, they've had to rely on that type of art expertise of the artisan who repeats making the same pizza dough or a certain souffle, or I'm comparing it to cooking, but you've done the same thing over and over, but you just get finer and finer and faster and better at it each time. They've really gone to the artisan level without really having the moorings of TCM. And then there's a minority, maybe 20%, who follow meridian therapy, which I think is wiser because these layerings that our ancestors, or at least the East Asian practitioners for a couple thousand years have laid down, there's a lot of gems in there. And it saves us a lot of time. We don't have to reinvent the wheel concerning the channels and stuff in their relationships.
I want to pivot just a little bit to something that you had talked about earlier, like way back at the beginning of this conversation. You were talking about Korean medicine and how it's different from, like you said, you're interested in history and you've spent some time there and looking at things. I'm curious to get your take on your sense of how the Korean medicine is different.
Korea is very interesting historically because it's between Japan and China. I mean, literally, Japanese culture owes so much to Korea. But they were both attacked by Japan, and so they're fiercely independent. And of course, what happened there, they drew from China, and then they downloaded most of what they learned. Most early Japanese physicians and herbalists were Korean in Japan.
Really?
Absolutely. The oldest.
So is Korean doctors living in Japan?
Yes, they immigrated millions, and this is amazing at a time when they had rickety boats. Millions of Koreans immigrated to Japan and downloaded Chinese culture and medicine.
Now, why did they immigrate to Japan?
Because of aggression from China, and also the royalty in Japan wanted that technology, and so it's like they become rich and famous because they had skills, not just acupuncture, the poetry, the classics. People, there was a hunger for that. In the right places, they could get a lot of T-way, a lot of status. So they have the best teaching 6-year program that includes not Toi Na, they have a different name for it, but body work, acupuncture, and herbs. It's a 6-year program, including the clinic.
And this is in Korea.
In Korea, and the government recognizes it as a legitimate medicine right alongside with Western medicine. This is in South Korea, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what North Korea has done. But in Japan, acupuncturists, herbalists don't have the status that Western medicine has legally. Although insurance coverage is there's some for herbs now. Korea uses generally a stronger form of acupuncture than Japan because they are on the continent, the weather is more rough, and the people are more tough. Other than that, any specific questions about their history? It's been hard because their culture tradition. First, Japan invaded Korea in the early 20th century. They occupied Korea for almost 100 years until they lost the war in 45. So they were dominated and influenced by Japan a lot. But the good news is that they've kept their medical traditions and given them a really good position in the medical system where you can get insurance coverage for both and patients use both, which isn't true for Japan. Patients, maybe there's 10%, 15% at most of people who get acupuncture in Japan. Korea uses traditional medicine much, much more.
I know that in Taiwan, you can get acupuncture and herbs covered under the national insurance.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
For people.
Yeah.
To access.
Yeah, it does make a difference. And then here we are in the States, insurances cover it to some degree in some places. I know much more out in the area where you live. I think here in Missouri, maybe, I don't know if insurance is a thing or not. I've been here long enough with a cash practice long enough that I haven't paid attention to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wish I could say more about it.
I have reservations about insurance. I know that when I was on insurance rolls and taking it, there were things that I was supposed to do to make more money, but I wasn't sure it was good for my patients.
Yeah, there's always that dilemma, and you want patients to have access, but the system is very limiting, and it's not just acupuncture; it's the whole
Yeah, the system in general.
Medical profession. It just the money is running the show, unfortunately. Whereas it could support the show, but it wants to run the show.
So here you are, years after working with fire and metal, still working with fire and metal and water and earth, and you've just added to your repertoire.
But still, the fire and metal is primarily acupuncture and moxibustion.
Yeah.
I don't hydrate people that much. Although, of course, if you work with fire and metal, you get everything else going. But it's shifted from fire and metal of welding to fire and metal of steel and moxa.
Isn't that funny sometimes how there are themes that you have at one point in life and they just repeat in different ways as time goes on?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I used to work in high tech. I used to work with computers. This is back in the 80s.
I know that.
And early 90s. So it was kind of stuff that we all consider very pedestrian today was pretty cutting edge then. And one of the things I realized about my job back then, because I had a knack for learning how to use software. I can't write code, but I could figure out how to use software and then use it to solve business problems, which gave me a good livelihood. And I used to think, yeah, I have such a weird job. My job is to help people solve problems that they can't solve on their own using a technology that they don't understand. That was my job with computers. Guess what my job is today with acupuncture?
Same thing.
I help people solve problems they can't solve on their own using a technology that they don't understand.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting because the technology that we're using, unlike IT, is kind of a biological information system that we're tapping into, and it's just formulating this idea here, but it's native to us, and it's not something that is constantly changing. It changes in a predictable way due to certain influences, but it's not. Bodies haven't changed, minds haven't changed, nervous systems haven't changed, the environments we're in have changed radically. But we can work with this biological information system. That's the way Dr. Monica used to call it. And he said that it's an intelligent system, and we could learn to work with it and get the most out of it, or what we call balance and harmony. So in a way, it's very similar to information technology, except that's outside. But this one's inherent in all of us, and it's more important to most people. I mean, once our heart stops, I don't think we're going to care about it if the mic works or if any of this works. It's the first and most important thing, and yet people, because we're so left-brained these days, routinely disregard their bodies and its needs, even breathing for sure, but drinking and giving the body rest and really simple things. And when we get to the bottom of it, the body just has certain needs, even if it's in disease and pain. And if we patiently meet those needs, the body's going to come around, unless they're on a terminal course. Most bodies are self-regulating, self-correcting, and it's almost not a conspiracy, but it's almost the cards are stacked for us as we give it.
I like that. The cards are stacked for us. How many people go through a day thinking, wow, the cards are stacked in my favor? I think it's so easy to go through a day and go, oh man, I got a bad hand. Everything's dealt against me. I got this problem, that problem. There's this, there's that. I was born into the wrong whatever, right? Or I'm at a certain level of society. Usually it's so easy to look at the bad cards that we were handed.
Yeah.
And to even consider, hey, it's my lucky day. Or to consider that, yeah, the cards are stacked in my favor. I've never considered the cards being stacked in my favor.
No, it's not positive thinking. It's just settling into what's happening. I sometimes joke and I say, well, all your discomfort floats in an ocean of well-being.
Oh.
What I mean by that is just number up whatever physiological function you want to number, from heart, your pH balance, to your blood pressure, to your heart rate variability, to your brain chemicals, to whatever. Maybe there's a dozen, maybe there's 100. How many of them are seriously off the homeostasis, and how many are giving you a problem? And you'll find that less than 10% are actually the problem. To walk in for acupuncture treatment, no matter how bad off you are, and I understand people are suffering. I'm not trying to diminish their suffering. That's not the point. But to suffer means you're alive. And the Japanese have this phrase, whenever you're having a hard time, it's because you're alive. And if you take that standpoint, you're not going to love your pain or love your problems. It's just that you're going to say, oh, got it. This is the sort of the price of admission. This is what I'm dealing with now, but I'm not dead yet. You really get to own the positive. You're not trying to make positive or pretend positive. You're owning the positive you're standing in.
This is a very subtle distinction between, I've got some patients, they're very into their affirmations. Like, I'm affirming I've got this and that, and da-da-da. this is just me. It seems to me that the affirmation that they're doing is actually an affirmation that they don't have it because they're trying to positively think themselves into it. What you're describing is this other kind of oceanic felt sense of I've got this problem floating within enough well-being that I can be here and have this experience.
Right. Like you can bring your hands in front of you and you can touch them or not, but you can feel this chi or this warmth or whatever you might feel between. You can even hold your hands together and know the blood is flowing. My hands are warm. And all your fingers are working. I feel every finger. And if that's not the case, you can go to anywhere else in your body. But there's hundreds of things that are for you, that are supporting you being you right now. And we just zip past that to the problem. And you're just making sure that our rational mind doesn't just become problem oriented, excessively problem oriented. And that's, again,
Yeah, excessively.
circling back to where we want to be, is having that space to go, okay, in this big picture, where does this fit? And where could it fit happier?
That, my friend, is something to explore and consider in the clinic. Patients will often ask me, I've mentioned this before on the podcast, this is one of the incredibly curious things to me about the work that we do, that sometimes treatments really land. They land very powerfully, right? You take the needles out and the patient's kind of coming out of a trance state, really, and they'll tell you something about how they feel. Maybe they haven't felt that way in a long time. And then they'll ask, how long will this last? Well, two things. They'll often ask, what did you do? What did you put on those needles? And then they'll want to know how long it's lasted or how long it will last. And what I find myself saying to people is, of course, I don't put anything on the needles. It's just a needle. But beyond that, acupuncture doesn't put anything into you. I mean, there's a needle going in your body, but acupuncture doesn't fundamentally add to what's in you. It can, however, call something out of you that's already there. And so this feeling that you have right now, that's you. I think it's a bit of a miracle that acupuncture can do this. And I think it's wonderful that aspects like this that are latent can be reawakened. One of the questions I have that I'm still puzzling through is how these aspects of us get lost in the first place.
There's so many ways that can happen, but in modern times, it's the stress. And in a Suwen, it reduces all, it's very Taoist, but it reduces all illness and disease to two words: overdoing. So moderation. And then what's the right balance point, whether you're eating or drinking or working or whatever you're doing? What's the right amount for your body at this time? That's an advanced course. But I really believe that getting off balance is going at it too long, too hard, or having an expectation. And I've boiled it down in my life to two major factors, and this goes back to kind of like the bull in the china shop or the bull fighting. All we really have to contend with in that regard for body and mind health is to not have unrealistic expectations, and of course a false sense of urgency. Some things, if you have to go to the bathroom sometimes, or you're bleeding because you cut your finger, you want to stop that bleeding pretty quickly. But 99% of the time, the sense of urgency is just a sense of urgency. You do not have to answer the phone right now. You do not have to look at that text right now. But you do. We're conditioned. We've learned to respond to things in a very fast way without considering our bodies or our minds. But again, overdoing is, or too fast, and conveniences and technology allow us to do more, multitask and all that. And so I think our well-being, I'm not sure our ancestors are that much healthier because they had such hard lives, but I have a suspicion that they were a little less stressed unless they were in conditions of famine or war. But who knows?
Yeah, it's hard to know. We don't live in those times. But I'll tell you what I come back to after all this delightful ramble here with you. I'm coming back to harmony among the troops. You were talking nothing trumps, a war situation. You can have the advantage of position. You can have the advantage of time. You could have the advantage of harmony among the troops. And when I think I'm answering my own question that I was asking you, these latent parts that we have, harmony among the troops, those various aspects of ourselves, the spirits of the organs themselves, the way the blood flows, all the multitudinous things, harmony among the troops. And sometimes people get in fights and don't talk to each other because, like, fuck you, right? And I think our body has that as well. It's like, I'm not talking to you, right? We're not doing this.
But I'm hoping that the harmony among the ranks of acupuncturists will be a little bit more as a result of geological and this conversation, that, we can relax and be ourselves and maybe learn more from each other. There's many ways of looking at what we do, and we've discussed some of them, but there's other areas, and they're all valid, and we can each take away what we need from that and to feed each other rather than basically become antagonistic. And because if you doubt or if you diminish another, in some way you diminish yourself. So just saying, oh, I don't get it, but I don't know. You just leave it neutral. You don't add any animosity, because if you're not, and this is why I love Dr. Shudo, is he is open to many. He once said, if a chiropractor has good success, he must have adjusted the meridians, without knowing it, of course. But he's open to other ways of going at things, and he never admonished me for studying with other teachers because he's just not insecure.
What you just said, Stephen, that you cannot know without animosity, which is very different than, I don't know, and that's stupid, or that's wrong, or that's not the way we do it, or, whatever it is. There's a lot of ways to express animosity. And, just hearing you say that, to be able to have that more neutral stance, I may not understand it, I may not get it, but if you can leave the animosity piece out.
And it comes from my insecurity, because why would I have to add any of that unless I was afraid that maybe he is right and I'm not?
Well, there is that. And look, for good reason, especially if you're in a crowded marketplace, right? And you're concerned about having enough patience to fill your rice bowl, pay your rent, do everything you need to do, send your kids to school, then I'm right, they're wrong. Is a not unreasonable stance toward making sure that you're taking care of the things you need to take care of. I can see where that comes in. And fair enough, but it does cause division. And I think ultimately cuts us off from all kinds of potential that we don't understand yet that might actually help us to get better.
Yes, and it's up to the patient to decide what works and what doesn't for them. And so as much outsourcing that thing to somebody else so that you're not holding that. So you can stay positive, because if you're at least neutral, it lives somewhere in your body, that chi of antagonism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's gonna bleed out somewhere you don't want it to.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's really helpful. I think I needed to hear that today. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Well, this has been a delightful walk around the block.
Certainly, we've been checked out every corner here.
I think it's probably time to wind it down. Anything else that you'd want to share with our listeners before we say goodbye for today?
Well, I want to thank you for listening in to this podcast and Geological, and just think about ways we can make time for ourselves and then make pockets of time within the treatment where you don't have to know, but you really want to know. So just time, just become that negative capacity I talked about some time back of just being in, trying to grow that capacity to be with yourself and then be with another person where You don't have to know what's going on, but you sure would like to know more.
I like that.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. All right, my friend.
Thank you so much.
Well, until the next time then.
It's been fun. You take care.
Well, friends, that wraps up today's conversation with Stephen Brown. One of the things that Stephen discussed, and I found to be one of the more interesting things about practicing acupuncture, is that good medicine, while it does require a certain technical expertise and understanding, and knowing a tradition, it can be helpful as well, still, beyond the knowing, it helps to have a willingness to pause, to listen, and to admit that we don't always know what we're touching, at least not yet. It rings true for me that medicine lives in relationship, in the way that we use our hands to listen, in the way that we let timing, space, and curiosity shape the treatment. He spoke to how intuition isn't magic, and it isn't stubborn certainty. It is something slowly built from contact, from paying attention, from letting the body teach us through repetition. I appreciated how he kept circling back to the clinician's interior, how the real work isn't about choosing the right, air quotes here, team, but cultivating a grounded sense of confidence without closing the door on mystery. And that part about how the body is fundamentally working in our favor. This is so easy to overlook when people come in with problems that they want to see removed. It's easy to focus on pathology and harder to see where the Zheng is working just fine. It's up to us as the practitioner to recognize that this is a quiet resource that we shouldn't overlook. I'm reminded that there is a rhythm and a cadence to treatment, a time to listen and question, a time to actively interact with the body, and then see how the system responds. That our work, it requires both doing and listening. Yeah, no one said that learning to be an acupuncturist would be easy, but for sure, it's interesting work.